next go to my very good friend, distinguished alum of this committee, Mr. Raskin, for any testimony about any amendment you care to make.
Chairman Cole, thank you very kindly. It's an honor to be here with my former colleagues from the Rules Committee, and I want to encourage you guys to keep going. I know it's been a tough few months here, but we're indebted to you for your hard work. I want to talk primarily about Amendment 182. We have 78,000 licensed gun dealers in America, which is more than the number of McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger Kings, and Subways combined, 78,000. And the vast majority of them are law-abiding and are trying to do the right thing. Only 5% of the gun dealers in America are the source of more than 90% of the firearms that are recovered from crimes. And I'm offering an amendment today to make sure that the tiny minority of bad apple firearms dealers who deal a hugely disproportionate number of firearms into the criminal underground and are linked to crimes will stop getting federal contracts. Now, what kind of federal contracts are we talking about? Well, the ATF, the Department of Treasury, the Department of Justice, the FBI all purchase firearms from private dealers. So what I want to say is that if you are on the tiny list that is kept of the bad or rotten apple gun dealers in the so-called Demand 2 program, that you should not be able to get a contract to sell weapons to the federal government. Now, Demand 2 plays a critical role in ensuring that federal, local, and state law enforcement agencies are able to solve gun crimes. The National Training Center, the NTC, which is part of the ATF, is the center, the only center that establishes the chain of custody of firearms recovered in crimes. And they do that by linking the importer or manufacturer to the first retail purchaser, creating links between a criminal suspect and a recovered firearm. And the NTC relies on law enforcement agencies to submit to them traces in bona fide criminal investigations. Well, decades ago, ATF found that it had become nearly impossible to trace firearms that had been resold. And they took the most reasonable step imaginable to make sure that they could trace these guns. They created a program that would require dealers with a very high number of firearms traced to them with a short time to crime ratio, which is the time between the sale of the firearm and the recovery of the firearm by law enforcement, to report whenever they're acquiring used guns from non-licensees. Okay, and this program has been a smashing, unmitigated success. In ATF's most recent trafficking assessment, more than 190,000 guns used in crimes whose acquisitions had been reported from that 3% of the firearm dealers subject to the Demand 2 program had been traced. So that program is working. And the threshold has changed several times over its history, most recently in 2018, when the Trump administration raised the threshold from 10 guns that had to have had a short time to crime ratio within 3 years to 25 or more guns traced in a calendar year with a time to crime of less than 3 years. So, just to give you a bit of counterpoint context, the overwhelming majority of gun dealers in America, more than 85%, have 0 guns traced to them in a calendar year. So we're talking about a very tiny slice that end up on this list. So why would we be spending taxpayer money through DOJ or Treasury or ATF to purchase guns from this tiny slice of the firearm dealers in America who fail to do what they need to do, but rather appear to be a magnet for the criminal element? That I heard some discussion before about undocumented people, illegal people coming to the country, purchasing guns. A lot of these gun sales are going to precisely the people who Mr. Norman was talking about when he was here. In any event, the blood that's on the hands of this tiny percentage of bad apple gun dealers should not be on our hands too. And I really hope that the committee will see fit to bring this amendment up. And I also wanted to say a word quickly about 2 amendments to strike provisions in the bill that are going to make it a lot easier for gun buyers to circumvent the law and turn pistols into concealable assault rifles. In January, DOJ published a new rule to restrict guns with an accessory known as a stabilizing brace, which transforms handguns into a weapon that is very powerful and very easy to conceal. Now, for some reason, there's not 1, but 2 separate provisions in this legislation to defund implementation and enforcement of the Justice Department rule. These provisions try to prevent ATF from enforcing the oldest federal firearms law in the country, one that's been on the books for nearly a century. All the rule did is to provide clarity to gun owners in the industry. If you put a device that objectively transforms a pistol into a short-barreled rifle or sawed-off shotgun, regardless of what you call it, a stabilizing brace or something else, those firearms are covered under the National Firearm Act. And so these amendments would reverse the amendments that are trying to make it easier for people to circumvent federal law. Firearms equipped with the so-called stabilizing braces have been used in several targeted mass murders recently with devastating consequences. In Dayton, Ohio, 9 people were killed, 27 injured outside a bar in 32 seconds, Mr. Chairman. In Boulder, Colorado, 10 people were killed in a couple of minutes at a grocery store. In Colorado Springs, Colorado, 5 were killed and 25 injured at Club Q. And in Nashville, Tennessee, just a few months ago, 6 people, 3 of whom were only 9 years old, were killed at a school, all with these stabilizing braces. So I want to speak very strongly for Amendments 178 and 179 that would bring proper regulation back to the field. I yield back and thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to my friend, Mr. Klein, for comments on any amendments he cares to address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the committee for its hard work on this important legislation. I'm a member of the CJS subcommittee, so I normally would not be